Have you ever been in a situation where you felt that every word you spoke made the situation worse? You've shared your thoughts, expressed your feelings, and yet, when you walk away from the conversation, you feel drained, as though you've lost more than just the argument. It's almost as if every word that left your mouth didn't bring you closer to the truth, but pushed you further from your own center. Perhaps you've experienced that feeling. A knot in your throat, an unease that follows you long after the conversation ends. But before we dive deeper into the video, I ask you to perform 3 simple things. Hit that like button and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers, and comment one thing that you are grateful for today. Thank you for your support, and let's get back to the video. In a world that prizes the ability to speak, to assert oneself verbally, silence can feel like a weakness. Society teaches us that in order to have influence, we must speak, defend, explain, and justify our positions at every turn. The loudest voices are often the most prominent. The most aggressive arguments often seem to win. And yet many who engage in this verbal battle find themselves drained, their strength dissipating with every word they utter. But what if I told you that true strength is not in speaking more, but in speaking less? Silence is not the absence of power, it is the presence of control. The strength of silence lies in its ability to remove you from the chaotic ebb and flow of constant reaction, to place you in a position where you are no longer controlled by the conversation, but instead remain the observer, calm, collected, and unshaken. Consider the moments when you choose silence in a heated discussion, when everyone else is clamoring for attention, desperate to make their point heard. You stand firm in your resolve to remain quiet. You may feel the tension in the air, the pressure to speak, to react, but you resist it. And in doing so, you create a space that is not filled with noise or justification, but with an undeniable, quiet strength. Silence is powerful precisely because it does not engage with the chaos around you. When you choose not to react, you're not surrendering. You're choosing to take control over your own energy. You stop reacting out of impulse or fear. You're no longer pulled into a cycle of defensiveness, constantly justifying and proving your worth. You break free from the trap that tells you that in order to be heard, you must first be loud, and in doing so, you reclaim your power. Think of the impact of a single moment of silence. It is like a stone dropped into a still pond. The ripples affect everything in their path. When you remain silent in the face of provocation, it forces the other person to reckon with their own noise. They begin to feel discomfort. Their need to explain themselves intensifies. Silence creates an uncomfortable void, one that others struggle to fill with their own words. It is unsettling because they are forced to confront their thoughts, their contradictions, their weaknesses, without your words to distract them. You may have been taught that silence is a form of submission, but nothing could be further from the truth. True submission comes from being ruled by the need to react, the constant pressure to justify, to defend. Silence is a choice, an active decision to remain outside of the emotional turbulence, to preserve your strength for something greater. It is not weak to remain silent. It is the ultimate form of strength. When you speak, you give part of yourself away. Each word you utter reveals something about you, your beliefs, your emotions, your vulnerabilities. The more you speak, the more you risk exposing yourself to judgment, to scrutiny, to misunderstanding. But when you choose silence, you preserve your energy. You hold your ground without giving up your position. Silence is a fortress, and within its walls, you find clarity, peace, and strength. True strength is not about forcing others to hear you, to validate your thoughts. It's about creating an aura of presence that doesn't require words. The silent person does not need to assert their value because their value is felt, not spoken. It is in their stillness, their composure, their ability to withstand the noise of the world without being drawn into it. In every situation, there comes a moment when silence becomes the most powerful choice you can make. It becomes an act of defiance against the world that insists on noise. It forces the world to adjust to your calm. It challenges the conventional idea that to be powerful, you must speak, shout, and argue. No, true power lies in the ability to remain silent when the world expects you to react. It is in the ability to be still in the chaos and, in doing so, command the respect that words could never achieve. When you choose silence, you are not surrendering. You are asserting your dominance in the most subtle yet profound way. You are no longer a pawn in the game of words, but a master of your own energy. And in that mastery, you will find your true strength. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation with someone who seemed to be playing a game, one where the rules were set by them, and your words were only used as pawns in their emotional chess match? It's unsettling, isn't it? You can feel the subtle manipulation in the air, someone trying to control the narrative, twist your words, or even make you doubt your own thoughts. This is where the true power of silence begins to reveal itself. When you refuse to react, when you choose silence over the urge to justify, you disrupt the manipulator's entire strategy. Manipulators thrive on your emotional reactions. They need your responses to maintain their control. By staying silent, you break the cycle. You deny them the fuel they need to sustain their manipulation. Manipulators operate by triggering emotional responses in others. They know that most people are conditioned to react impulsively, whether it's out of anger, guilt, shame, or fear. They play on these emotions because they know that a reactive mind is a subjugated mind. But when you choose silence, you remove the emotional charge from the conversation. You stop playing their game, and instead, you become the one who controls the emotional temperature of the exchange. Consider the effect of your silence on someone who thrives on manipulation. As they speak, expecting you to react, they start to feel the tension build in the absence of a response. Their words lose their power. They begin to second-guess themselves. Are you judging them? Are they losing control of the situation? The more they talk, the more they reveal their own vulnerabilities. You don't need to say a word. Your silence speaks louder than anything you could say. When you refuse to engage emotionally, manipulators are left exposed. They need your validation, your emotional energy, to prop up their control. Without it, they crumble. You don't need to directly confront them or challenge their behavior. Your silence alone is enough to destabilize their position. The power they once held over you begins to slip away because they are no longer able to trigger the responses they expect from you. What's even more interesting is the psychological toll silence takes on a manipulator. Most people in these situations are not even aware of their manipulation. They are simply operating from a place of deep insecurity. They are trying to control you, not because they have more knowledge, more strength, or more intelligence, but because they fear losing control over the narrative. They fear being exposed. And that's where your silence becomes a weapon. It forces them to confront their own weaknesses, the cracks in their facade that they desperately try to keep hidden. Your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back at them the truth they are trying to hide. Their fear, their insecurities, their need for validation. And they cannot stand it. The longer you remain silent, the more they are left to wrestle with their own self-doubt. You don't need to speak, because your silence is a mirror that forces them to face themselves. It becomes an uncomfortable reflection they can't escape from. Silence, in this context, is a profound weapon. It isn't passive. It is a strategic withdrawal from the emotional drama. It allows you to keep your energy intact while causing disruption in the manipulator's carefully crafted narrative. When you stay silent, you refuse to be a part of their emotional games, and you begin to regain control of the situation. But the power of silence doesn't stop there. It's not just about breaking the manipulator's grip. It's also about understanding the deeper psychological dynamics at play. Manipulators depend on you engaging with them. They rely on your emotional responses to maintain their dominance. When you remove yourself from the equation, you disrupt their entire strategy. Your silence destabilizes them, making them question their own tactics. Without your emotional reactions to play on, They are forced to confront their own inner turmoil, their own fears. This is the power of silence. It doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It doesn't need to be confrontational to be strong. Silence, when used strategically, becomes the ultimate tool for breaking free from psychological manipulation and regaining control of your own energy. Have you ever noticed how easily our egos get involved in conversations, especially when we feel misunderstood or challenged? The moment someone questions our beliefs, disagrees with our perspective, or simply doesn't acknowledge our point of view, our ego can feel threatened. The need to react becomes almost automatic. But what if I told you that this very need to react, to defend, is a sign of weakness, not strength? Ego is fragile. It is the part of us that demands validation, the part that feels the sting of rejection or criticism. It is the part that cannot stand being ignored or contradicted. And it is in these moments, when our ego is triggered, that we lose control. The desire to defend ourselves, to justify our actions or beliefs, is not born out of true confidence. It's born out of insecurity. The more we react, the more we reveal that our sense of self is dependent on the opinions and perceptions of others. Think about how often you feel the need to react when someone disagrees with you. It's almost as though your ego cannot stand being questioned, and it pushes you to engage in a verbal struggle, to prove that you are right. But here's the truth. Every time you feel compelled to defend yourself, you have already lost. Not because your argument wasn't valid, but because the mere act of defending yourself shows that you are still emotionally tied to the approval of others. You are still caught in the cycle of needing to be right, needing to be understood, needing to be validated. True strength lies in the ability to stand firm without the need for approval. When you stop reacting, you step outside of the influence of your ego. You break free from the chains of validation and recognition that bind you. In this space, you no longer feel the need to prove yourself to anyone because you know who you are. Your sense of self is not dependent on external validation. You do not need others to agree with you, to understand you, or to approve of you. The reactive mind is a mind that is controlled by the ego. It is a mind that cannot bear being questioned, a mind that must always justify, explain, and defend. But the observing mind, the mind that does not react, is a mind that is free. When you stop reacting, you stop giving your ego the power it craves. You become a silent observer, watching the world unfold without being pulled into every emotional tug-of-war. You are no longer a slave to your reactions. Instead, you are in control of your own emotional landscape. This is where silence becomes the ultimate weapon against the ego. The moment you choose silence over reaction, you break the ego's hold on you. You no longer feel the need to defend your beliefs, to fight for your point of view, because you know that the truth stands on its own. It does not need to be shouted or proven. It simply is. When you choose silence, you send a message to the world that you do not need to engage in their battles. You are no longer tethered to their opinions, their judgments, or their perceptions. The world may try to provoke you, to push you into a corner, to make you react, but your silence becomes an indomitable force. It says, I am beyond this. I do not need to defend myself. I am who I am, regardless of what you think. This is the power of the silent mind. It is a mind that does not react out of ego, but one that remains calm, composed, and unshaken in the face of provocation. It is a mind that understands that the need to react is the greatest sign of weakness, because it reveals how deeply our self-worth is tied to the approval of others. By mastering your reactions, you master your ego. By choosing silence, you gain control over your emotional responses. You become the observer, the silent force that moves through the world with unshakable confidence. And in this silence, the ego loses its power. You are no longer a slave to the need to be right, to be understood, or to be validated. You are simply yourself, unbothered by the noise around you. Have you ever imagined living a life where you are completely free from the pressure of societal expectations, free from the need to conform, to please others, or to gain approval? In a world dominated by the noise of those trying to be seen, heard, and validated, there exists a rare individual who stands apart. This individual is the overman, a being who has transcended the limitations imposed by society and shaped their own values, their own path, their own purpose. The overman does not simply exist in the world. They shape it. They are creators, not followers. The overman is not bound by the rules of the herd. They do not bend to the judgment or criticisms of others. They are the masters of themselves, untouched by the need for approval or the urge to explain or defend themselves. To the overman, silence is not a passive retreat. It is an active choice, a way of living and being that asserts their power without the need for constant words or reactions. Imagine living a life where you are completely unaffected by the opinions, judgments, or desires of others. The world may shout, may demand, but you remain calm, composed, and undisturbed. This is the life of the overman, someone who does not feel the need to react, justify, or explain their existence. The overman understands that true power lies in the ability to remain silent when the world demands noise, and that silence is not weakness, but strength. The overman does not engage in the petty struggles that most people are caught in. They are not interested in proving their worth, convincing others of their beliefs, or winning debates. Their silence becomes their presence. While others scramble to be heard, the overman remains silent, and in that silence, they command respect. Their very being disrupts the noise around them, forcing others to question their own need to speak, defend, and react. The silence of the overman is not passive. It is deliberate. It is not born from fear, but from absolute self-mastery. The overman knows that every word spoken is a move in a game, and the fewer moves they make, the less they expose themselves to vulnerability. Silence, to the overman, is a weapon, a tool to retain power, to protect themselves from the weaknesses that words often reveal. The key to becoming the overman is self-mastery. It is the ability to control your reactions, to remain calm in the face of chaos, and to navigate the world without being swept up in the emotional tide. The overman does not need the validation of others. They do not crave recognition or approval. Their power comes from within, from the understanding that true strength lies in remaining unshaken, regardless of the circumstances. Imagine the power of living with this level of control over your own emotions and reactions. The overman does not need to engage in conflict because they have transcended the need for conflict. They understand that victory does not lie in winning debates or proving points. It lies in not needing to engage in them at all. The overman is not someone who avoids confrontation. They simply do not need to participate in the drama of the world. Their silence becomes their strength, a strength that shapes the world around them rather than reacting to it. To the overman, silence is not about avoiding conflict. It is about owning the space around them. It is about choosing when to speak and when to remain silent, knowing that the silence itself is an assertion of their power. In a world of constant noise, the overman becomes the calm, the stillness that others must adapt to. Their presence is felt more deeply than words ever could. This is the mastery that silence brings. The overman lives free from the expectations of others. They do not need to justify, to explain, or to prove themselves. Their silence speaks louder than any argument. Their power comes not from what they say, but from what they do not say. They shape their reality, their path, and their world through their own will, unaffected by the noise of others. The overman understands that silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is mastery. It is the force that shapes the world without needing to engage in the struggles of the world. This is the silence of strength, of the overman, who has created their own values, their own truth, and stands firm in their own being, unaffected by the noise that surrounds them. Now, my beautiful viewer, if this message has sparked something in you, feel free to like and subscribe and comment. I am successful if you have reached this far into the video. Thank you and hope to see you in the next video. Salute.